welcome. If you haven't seen it already, last week I did part 1 of some of the greatest first-person shooter single-player games you can get. And today, it's time for part 2. Let's not mess around, let's get straight on with the list, and we're going to start with Halo Reach. I could have put any of the Halos on this list, but I've gone with Reach because I liked it best. It's a prequel to Halo Combat Evolved, and it's also the last game made by Bungie. This is the 6th game in the Halo series, set in 2552. There's a war going on with the Alien Covenant. You are Noble 6, an elite super soldier sent to defend the human world known as Reach when it is attacked. Fans of the series will know exactly what they're getting here and exactly what to expect. There's a very good reason this series was such a big deal when it first came out and is still great fun today. Okay, some of the later games might not live up to its beginnings, but they're all still good fun, and I do think Halo Reach was in some ways the peak of it. Moving on to a bit of a darker, dingier setting. We're going to go with a bit of a cheat because it's 2 games in one, Metro Redux. Metro Redux gives you 2033 and Metro Last Light and the DLC for it as well. It's a brilliant bargain and very affordable on either the Xbox One or PS4. 2033, you're in a devastated post-apocalypse Moscow. The train line is the only safe haven for the human species. You're in a bleak underground. The only alternative to this underground chasm, a very dangerous topside where you not only lack oxygen, but have to deal with the mutated creatures along the way. Last Light picks up the story straight from 2033. This time you're in the city, there's a human civil war going on, you've still got those pesky mutants to deal with, but also the majority of the humans you come across with can be dangerous as well. Be careful who you trust, be very cautious with your resources, this is true survival horror. You can either go for stealth and caution, or brave and all guns blazing. It's up to you. Going back in time a little bit now, to a true pioneer of the first-person series, with Half-Life 2. This game has been praised ever since it came out in 2004, and for very good reason. At the time, the physics engines used was quite game-defining, and it still holds up today. Just use the gravity gun to get a real sense of how well it works. This is a real classic that everybody should experience at least once. Yes, it's mainly linear, but the zones that you're in do allow some exploration, and you will find some rewards if you go to the trouble to explore. You've got diverse enemies, a very engaging story, environmental puzzles, and of course, shooting aliens. And if you want to get it as a real bargain, go for the PS3 Orange Box set, and then you get 2 other really good games as well. How about a bit of looter shooting? And when it comes to the looter shooter, there's some very good ones, but to me, Borderlands is always going to be up there as the best. Borderlands 3 is my favourite, so that's the one we're going with. It's based 7 years after Borderlands 2. I will say, all the Borderlands games are great, so whichever one you pick up, you're guaranteed to have a good time. I like 3 because it just improved on the gameplay. The looter shooter experience was really tuned to excellence here. You've got the same core gameplay loop as the others. Take on missions from characters in the world or the notice boards, collect loot, gain experience, customise your guns. In this one you can actually leave Pandora and go to other planets in a spacecraft called the Sanctuary 3. Your mission? Defeat the evil twins and their cult. Get the weapons, get the skills required. This game is a real fan service to lovers of the series, and the past games as well. They even put in plenty of characters and Easter eggs from the previous games for you to enjoy if you've played them. But what if Borderlands is a little bit too bright for you, and you want something scary? Well, how about Resident Evil 7 Biohazard? The first Resident Evil to feature a first-person view, and oh boy does it work well. To me, it really impacts the experience, it increases the immersion, and makes the jump scares that little bit more effective. This was the perfect return to pure survival horror from the more action-orientated 5 and 6. The setting, a derelict plantation. the game has chosen to emphasise the survival, horror and exploration side of things. Whenever you come across an enemy, you have the choice whether to go for the stealth approach, and you will have to run when necessary. Of course, managing resources is important. The puzzles are deviously clever. I'll give you a little tip actually, without it being a spoiler. Find and watch any of the VHSs you can. They really do help with the puzzles. Little tip there. It's a very, very creepy environment. The Baker family are the stuff of nightmares. Will you find your missing wife? What other disturbing things will you find? It's up to you to go and explore. This to me is pinnacle Resident Evil. I like to jump around and try to go for different games as I can throughout this list. So let's go from bleak, scary to the future, which you could consider scary, depending what you're expecting, in Cyberpunk 2077. Now, we all know the story of Cyberpunk from when it launched. I was someone who pre-ordered the game, and yes, I did take it back for a refund because it was launched in such a bad state. But I have to give credit where it's due to CD Projekt Red. They could have written this off and moved on, but they've patched it an awful lot. I will say, just from research on the internet, the genuine consensus seems to be it runs an awful lot better on a current gen PS5, Xbox Series or a powerful gaming PC than it does on 8th gen consoles. That said, they have improved the experience on the 8th gen, or at least that's what the internet tells me. You're playing as the character V, and you're dealing with fallout from a failed heist. You have a biochip of Johnny Silverhand, who I'm sure you know by now. It's played by Keanu Reeves. He's trying to take over your mind. You've got to customise V, upgrade your implements, explore the open world Night City. All 6 regions offer something quite unique in their own way, and there are some colourful companions along the way. Cyberpunk is getting renewed interest and attention right now, because the new DLC they've just launched has been universally praised. So perhaps this game is finally where it should be. Well done, CD Projekt Red. Okay, you didn't launch it in the best condition, but you've backed your horse all the way to the finish line. When it comes to games and Hollywood, there are some standard enemies that you'll find in a lot of games. One of which is Nazis. Let's go shoot some. In Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. This is my favourite Wolfenstein game that I've played to date. It is 1961. You're in an alternate history. The Nazis won World War II. You are part of the resistance in the USA. The gameplay mechanics very, very similar to the previous games. The only notable major difference is you can now dual wield any weapon combo. You've got a choice in the beginning, which largely alters the story, meaning there's definite replay value there and a good reason to go through a second run. It's got some of the best first-person shooter gameplay around. Ignite the revolution, choose stealth or all guns blazing. I generally can't resist all guns blazing. You even get to break Enigma codes. Wolfenstein has been at the front of first-person shooters for a long time, and you know what? It still is. Can't recommend this game strongly enough, and it seems to be pretty much everywhere, so no matter what console you've got, you should be able to play it. It's even on Switch. I'm trying to only give one game from each franchise throughout all these lists. I covered my favourite Call of Duty in part 1, so let's go for one of their main competitors this time, in Battlefield Bad Company 2. Battlefield has been a thorn in Call of Duty's side ever since they came along with the destructible environments. Now, I will admit, ever since 2042, they're not as strong a competitor. That definitely dented the Battlefield brand. But we're talking about just the campaigns here. And if you go back, you'll find some really engaging, fun ones. Bad Company 2 is simply my favourite Battlefield campaign in the entire series. It's got the destructible environments, which in the 7th gen was still quite novel. It's a really entertaining story. You're part of an elite squad sent on a mission, the outcome of which could dictate the fate of the world. You're after a once thought mythical, now thought real super weapon developed in World War II. It's a modern warfare setting. It's done absolutely perfectly. the companions along the way, the squad you're part of. The AI works well, you get to know the characters, you even get some humorous interactions between them. It's a real good time to be had. It's not long, 6-7 hours at the absolute most, but it's a joy for every minute. Can't recommend this strongly enough. It's physically trapped on the 7th gen. I'm sure you can get it digitally on newer consoles if you so wish. And now for a game which was only released within the last 12 months. Metroid Prime Remastered. If you've been keeping an eye on the gaming news, you'll have heard of this. It's one of 2023's most applauded games. If it wasn't for Tears of the Kingdom, it could be considered the best Switch game of last year, but Zelda is Zelda, and that is a brilliant game as well. This is of course a remaster of a GameCube classic, and it is an absolute masterclass in how a remaster should be done. You're of course playing as Samus, the familiar protagonist of the series. You're battling space pirates. You're going to end their experiments. It's very big on exploration. It's an adventure game as well as a shooter game. You go from first person to third person when you're in the Morph Ball. I won't spoil the story for you, but it's impressive. It's a brilliant story. This is probably one of the best remakes to be made of a proper old game, not one that just came out a couple of years ago. This was the best-selling Metroid game until Metroid Dread. So it's no wonder they remastered it, and I really hope they remaster the rest of the trilogy. And of course, I do like to put something a little bit retro in that you might not have thought of. This time I'm going for James Bond 007 Nightfire. This is a PS2 era licensed game, which you might automatically think means it sucks, but it doesn't. Personally, I love James Bond. It's a franchise I'm very fond of and I really enjoy. This is my favourite Bond game. It's a completely original story. It's got a completely original theme song, new characters. It's all just done beautifully. If you want more Bond in your life, this is it. It's got the second best Bond after Sean Connery, Pierce Brosnan, his likeness, his voice acting. It's a proper Bond adventure. And for anybody who likes that franchise, I can't recommend it enough. It's even got the Aston Martin. And that concludes part 2. But fear not, there is a part 3 coming very, very soon. I'm also going to put a link here for part 1 in case you've missed it. I hope you've enjoyed this list. Do please feedback to me in the comments any games that I've not mentioned which you think should be included. I've already written part 3, but I could very well do a part 4. Hope you've enjoyed watching my video, and until next time, I'll see you very soon. Ta-da!